The idea of being beside the sea, the sound of the sea. I don't think it really matters where you would live. As you know, if you're a person who comes from the sea, then I think that you always seem to be drawn back to it.
One thing about the sea is it's a terminus, it's a terminal. The train doesn't go any further, and the buses don't go any further, and the cars don't go any further, and once you're at the coast you stop. And the territories defined out by this natural element, which is both your friend and a very, very dangerous element as well.
Looking out towards the horizon, I think, always gives a sense of you could fall off the edge of the world. No, I think living around the sea, it just gives you much more, because you're looking out at a landscape that's completely open. So it allows, I think, for more openness than if you lived in a closed city. The city becomes more closed, things start falling on top of you.
150 metres from the sea edge. You know, if it's a stormy night, I remember standing as a kid, you're able to look at the kitchen window and there's sea spray landing on the window.
You know, I just love the taste, the feel of the salt in the water, the taste of it. In my eyes, there's nothing nicer than walking around your kitchen in your bare feet and feeling the sand under your feet. You know, like sand is all, to me, there's a lovely feeling and texture to it.
Because when you're out at sea, it's very hard to judge exactly where you are. You know, there's no hard shoulder out there to get out and have a wee walk around and check, you know.
People have the opportunity to look out over the horizon and think, what if?
Down around the sea you get such crashing waves, you know, it's just, it can be fierce, shows you the power of the sea.
But going out in a boat and fishing, it's a different life altogether. It's a beautiful, you know. I mean, there's some rough weather, some rough days. The sea can, on one moment, can rise so, you know, so rough, yeah. And lives can be lost. So I mean, there's no question that I respect the sea very much indeed. It is hard. Sometimes there were very little money coming in. There were very, very little money coming in, and that was the only one that you could turn to, was the sea, going out fishing.
It was a very hard existence, very hard. These fishermen had great faith in God. In fact, they were all saved. Now, they went to sea without life jackets, and they went to sea with leather boots, and they didn't have a radio or an electric or a light bulb in the boat. They went by the stars, they fished by the stars. But if they'd ever got into trouble, and heavens above, I don't know how they managed not to get into trouble, but they did. They managed, but they knew they would meet their maker. They had no fear, because they were all what's known as God-fearing fishermen, which is a slight contrast to the younger generation today of fishermen. But no, thanks be to God, none of the fishermen were ever drowned or lost. There were very few fatalities. They didn't risk their lives because there was plenty of fishing. Today you would have go the extra yard to try to pay the payments off in the boat. These boats that they had were handed down from family to family, and there weren't big heavy payments to be made in the boats. They only their fuel bill, they didn't. In those days there was no insurance. None of the boats were insured. None of the boats, they were painted if they really needed painted, and the engine oil was changed if it really needed changed, and if things were never replaced. They were always repaired. And these fishermen were the mothers of invention. They were talented men. They could fix anything at sea. I remember a core plug blew out of an engine once and they stuck a penny in it. An old penny was exactly the same size as a core plug in a Ford engine, and that got them home. There used to be the biggest sea angling competition in Europe, held in Portrush in the last few days of September, and it ran over a period of 3 days. It was called the Causeway Coast Sea Angling, and people came from all over the world, from America, Canada, European countries, to fish, and it was unbelievable what fish were caught and the variation of the fish. I remember specifically there was a character called, I'll get his name in a wee minute or two, Roy Scott. He fed a conger eel for a year in Portrush Harbour and then caught it at the competition and won the competition. It was unbelievable. I helped him feed it all year. We fed this monster. The conger eel had a head on it the size of a Labrador. It was the biggest conger eel I ever saw in those days. And he fed it all winter and all summer. And then come September, whenever it was time for the competition, he knew what it was, and he caught it and won the competition. There was people from all over the world, and he won it. That was hilarious. He didn't, of course, nobody was told that story after he'd won it.
There's something meditative about sitting and looking at the sea. I think that's why so many people do it. And I think that honestly it shifts your philosophy a bit. Probably romanticising it a bit, but there's something very, very fundamental about it, where you're very close to these elements of air and water and the edge of the land. I used to watch the dogs, and they're not remotely worried about next Thursday, and they're not annoyed about last Wednesday. They're down here sniffing the seaweed and hoping to find a bag of chips or something like that. And they're really in the here and now, and that's what I think watching the sea brings you back to.
But it's probably all the things. It's the air, the salt, the light conditions, and then the reflection of the sea that gives you that bright light. It's just the whole variety, the whole spectrum. So it's a particularly beautiful part of the coastline. It's quite dramatic and varied. And although some may say it is crowded, it's certainly not as crowded as some, and maybe County Down, the north coast of County Down. So I still think, even though the towns are developed, that you only have to walk out of the town and you're on to a beautiful coastline. You're not restricted to what the towns offer. And there's that many people who are much more active these days. Any Sunday morning, you can go down to East Land and Portrush, and you have, there'd be hundreds of people on the beach walking up and down, whether it's, they might be flying kites or playing football or surfing or kayaking, but it's, even though it may be crowded compared to what I experienced when I grew up, it's a delight to see the people in there using it.